Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and this is the Gerber Stake Out. It's an 11 tool multi-tool, and I kind of have to put this in the category of what were they thinking. Now I really like certain Gerber multi-tools. I actually am a big fan of this one-handed operation style, just to easily deploy the pliers, since a plier and knife is really the main thing I use. And these are supposed to, flick out like that. That's how you can extract it. Some come out a little bit easier. Often they get gummed up. But I've got a couple of them here. These are USA made Gerber multi-tools. I find this one kind of interesting. This is designed for explosive ordnance disposal. So it's got, the C4 spike, so you can punch a hole in it to put the detonator. And then you've got your stripper cord cutter up on the front end. It's interesting that these things are just floating around in, in public, I guess. But I keep my eye out for things like this if I see them in pawn shops. Often the Gerber doesn't command near as much as the Leatherman, and some of the older ones people don't quite know, or they think this is a stupid design and they sell them for less. But anyway, the other area is, since Leatherman discontinued the squirts, which were just amazing, great, fabulous. If you send in a broken one, you're not going to get one back. I've had this Gerber Vise forever. Real simple little design. They don't make this one anymore, but they do make the dime, and the dime is kind of the squirt replacement. It's for the handiness of something like this. Yeah, they're worth every penny, but they're generally not made terribly well, and you can't do a whole lot of crazy stuff with them. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for this guy. So the Stake Out has kind of camping overtones. And the big thing on this is this feature right here, which is a tent stake pulling tool. Basically, it's just a hook. And you're thinking, well, why don't I just use this hook? And that's what I thought. I guess because of the T-handle, if your stake is really stuck. Now, the tent stakes they might be working with, or maybe these old style here, a couple of kicks and they usually fall out on their own. In fact, they often fall out on their own anyway. I don't use these. Maybe some of these sharper ones. This is an old North Face T70, 75, T6 aluminum. This is, I think, the best. This is, I believe it's called a Hurricane or something. It's an MSR, Mountain Safety Research stake with the twist, but these are not cheap. But these are the best that I've used, unless you need a sand stake or something like that. So yeah, you could pull one out, and they do get wedged in there pretty tight. So pulling a stake out, especially if you use them a lot or they're in dirt, packed dirt, that could be an issue. So yeah, it does have that feature. In fact, you can buy specialized hammers like this, and that is not only a bottle opener, but that's a tent stake puller. This is Nemo equipment, something, or Mountain Safety Research. This one, you have to figure it out. It's kind of slippery, trying to grab something, but you could use maybe that and yank it out. But that's more designed for driving them in and maybe trying to wedge them out with that. That's why I like the Nemo a little better. But anyway, what else? It doesn't have a lot of redeeming features. It does have a knife, and the knife is a locking knife, and you can get it out. And I don't mind the blade. I think that's a useful camp blade. However, it also has scissors, and I can manage to get those out. They're pretty stiff. I did loosen this, and the whole thing fell apart, and it didn't make any difference. I don't know if that's really all that useful, unless it had a fine tip, but then they don't want to do that. I mean, for first aid applications, I guess, and, they don't lock. But then it starts to come unhinged a little, goes off the rails. Yeah, that's a bottle opener. Gerber and Leatherman have been doing this style forever. This thing here is a pair of tweezers. I thought Swiss Army proved that that's not terribly functional, so I don't know why we're still doing it. At least that's my interpretation. Very rare do they seem to have the strength, because they use such thin spring steel that they just lose strength. You can pinch yourself with them. It's kind of hard. Maybe if they put like a tick puller or something, that'd be kind of interesting. But anyway, here's where it's weird. It's got a file here. Okay. I guess, there are a lot of files on Leatherman blades, but they to me are in a much more useful position, being on like the side of a blade or the back. But it's these guys right here. Now there's a bunch of features in here, but I can't get these out. Not with my finger anyway. In fact, I've got a pry bar here, and I'm going to try to pry them out. So here's the saw. The saw is very sharp. It does not lock into position. So, you know, be a little bit careful, and of course a very short blade. Saws can come in handy, but non-locking saws worry me because, yeah, you might be sawing this way, you know, with a branch or something, and you lift up, and maybe you've you know, changed the angle here, and then if you go to saw, you might end up closing it on yourself or something. I mean, it can happen. Saws can be kind of dangerous. And then the other tool in here, if I can get it out of there. I mean, if you've got other implements, this would pull out tent stakes because it's a T-handle. If I can get it, you know, through something just like that and pull it out. We do that all the time with all kinds of stuff. I usually use sticks, you know, or I used sticks, and since I've switched to the better stuff. But anyway, so what do they have on this? This is an awl. I guess you can poke things with it, but then also it's designed to scrape a fire rod, ferricium rod, as if you couldn't do that with the knife blade, or maybe even that. So that's what they're selling it as a feature. Yeah, it would definitely work, but again, it is not. It's a very stout, pointed, you know, heavy-duty tool. You could do quite a bit with that, but it doesn't lock. And again, that worries me, you know, especially on anything that you might use in a thrusting movement. Drawing is different. Sawing, most people, like if you have a silky saw or something, those are mostly, they're designed for pulling. But a lot of times when you give somebody a saw, I have to get my pry bar to get it back out of here. Oops, that's not it. Goodness, yes, it is this hard. Anyway, so there it is. If it's out, but a lot of times people are pushing and pulling, and I can just see it accidentally, you know, going crazy onto something, shutting down on your hand. But anyway, so there it is, 11 tools. Is it worth it? Well, I've seen these on sale as low as $19 and change. I've also seen them for $55, which is the full retail. Amazon's got this right now at around $30, depending, $32 for the silver, and then it comes in a couple other colors for a little bit less or maybe a little bit more. I don't know. To me, it's one of those maybe handy in the car, but there are so many better tools. In fact, overall, I'd probably rather have a Leatherman squirt than this thing, and I'll figure out how to pull up the tent stakes without it. But for a lot of things, these other Gerbers, they're just a nice tool. I don't care for the design of a lot of the rest of this stuff, trying to get the tools out of it. But a lot of times, you know, if you want to deploy the plier, you know, that's what it was designed for. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, and if you've got a experience with this or another multi-tool that's a little out there. There's probably like 30 different versions of this style that Leatherman has. They are really throwing spaghetti at the wall right now, trying to figure things out, especially with their armbar stuff. So many different options with so many different possible tools. But this one caught my eye, you know, thinking this is kind of interesting. A lot of people complain they can't get the blades out, or they snapped them off or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, there it is, the Gerber Stake Out, for what that's worth. Let me know your thoughts. And with that, Doc out.